Greetings. I'm Detective Sergeant First Class Harry Gavel. This is part 2 of Pitchfork. Listener discretion is advised due to the graphic nature of the content. Chapter 6. Enter the Manhunters. The first order of business in the world of being homicide detectives is to identify the victim, learn everything possible about the victim, list, document, and speak to all known witnesses, family, friends of the victim. In this case, learn all you can about the victim's trip, the 5 whores and the hobo, if you will, the who, what, where, when, why, and how did this happen. Find those answers and you will have the tentpoles of the case. In this case, once on scene at the park, Detective Gavel and Detective Mass started with a cursory short interview of the 2 uniform guys that took the initial report to get a general gist of the initial information received. From there, the detectives briefly interviewed Creel and Carmella separately. They were both interviewed on the scene. The gelato vendor, after which they gave them appointments to be formally interviewed at the Roundhouse on the following morning. They had also made arrangements for the parents of Dr. Breacher and the innkeeper, Mr. Bellyford, to meet at police headquarters for formal interviews as well. On scene, the detectives definitely got the vibe that there was not a normal explanation as to why May was missing, which sharpened their instincts and heightened their suspicions. She had no one in the city that she could have met and left with, especially given her demeanor of how cautious she was in meeting new people. The 2 detectives assigned to the case were fondly known as the Lone Ranger and Detective Zero. The Lone Ranger because Detective Gavel stood about 6 foot tall, and referring jokingly that Detective Mass was of zero help to him. Detective Gavel was a hard-boiled, long-time street grunt, Harry Gavel. He was a tough, no-nonsense detective who usually got his man. The latter, Detective Raymond Ray Massey, a.k.a. Detective Zero, a play on Tonto, according to his peers, was considered the city's top detective. Not only did he know the city, he grew up in Camden City, just over the bridge from Philadelphia. Street smart as they come, he and Gavel were deadly detectives together. They both liked and respected each other, which made for a good combination. Detective Gavel also knew Officer Coslow couldn't track a muddy elephant through 10 feet of snow. He was known more as a pussy hound than a detective, but in reality, that was not the case at all. It couldn't be further from the truth. First of all, he couldn't get laid in a female prison with a fistful of pardons. He wore cheap suits and cheesy ties, and he had no game with the ladies. He was single. He had a new Corvette every couple of years, had bucks from investments. He was as smart as they come. Later, he was a homicide detective with a college degree in psychology, which helped him greatly in the interview room. He was in many ways just like his old partner, Detective Harry Gavel. Nicknamed when he was in uniform as a cop back then, in the day, he was nicknamed by gavel as the Tin Man. Gavel had campaigned for Detective Kozlow to join him in the homicide unit because of his meticulous investigative prowess. They broke his balls mainly because he was a by-the-book officer. In those days, cops did not always play by the rules. That's just the way it was. Detective Kozlow lived by the rule book. He was no risk taker. Detective Gavel and Detective Mass were on this case like two hungry sharks circling in the water, which they both smelled blood. Full speed indeed, yet slow and meticulous, they would quietly conduct their very thorough missing persons case. They knew that the possibility of never finding their victim alive, or at all for that matter, was a real and present concern. To miss an important fact or detail could derail the case permanently. They knew it, and they had no way of knowing if they missed something. Think about it. It's the kind of thing that keeps homicide detectives awake at night. What did I miss, you ask yourself? What am I not considering? Who should know something that I didn't speak to yet, or who I don't know exists yet? Life or death could be in the balance. After summoning each potential witness to present themselves at the roundhouse for interviews, not having the identifiers on each witness, it was imperative, as in any investigation, for the assigned detectives to submit requests for background checks to be conducted on each witness. This process takes time to search the records held at the county sheriff's office or the police department, if the police department is large enough to house its own records. In this case, the records were kept at the police department. Record searches in the 1970s were still being done by hand. Sometimes a record or rap sheet could cause the witness to be interviewed again, perhaps arrested due to an outstanding warrant, which could lead to additional information gained that was withheld during the first interview. In a murder case, the gloves are off. The homicide detectives know very well that you have to break some eggs to make an omelet. They will use any tactic or technique known to man to break a case and still stay within the confines of the law. That is key, or it can all go up in smoke. Record checks could take days to get results back. In the interim, they are pounding the streets, passing out flyers, talking to persons associated with the victim, talking to persons associated with any witness in the case, scouring, searching, asking colleagues of any contact with or information about the Headless Horse Carriage Company. They're looking for anything that may shed light in or on the case. The detectives want their skills to pay off, but they know they also need luck to put them behind the sandwich that they work so hard to chomp into. If they find that a person they want to interview had a criminal record in another state, they better contact that state and learn the details. If you think being a detective is some sort of gravy job, think again. To be an effective, good detective is not good enough. They are plentiful. If you don't solve cases, you carry the title, but not the badge. To be recognized as one of the best, you had to solve cases, tough cases, and stay within the law doing it. Not with your charming persona, or golfing with the bosses, or handing out birthday gifts to the clericals to get them to do your work, but hard-nosed fact-finding, alibi-busting, exposing lies, verifying truths, and in essence, getting information from the street where no one wants to talk to you. And how do you know that you are one of the best? No one tells you. Not to your face, anyway. Rather, when prosecutors and DAs have their choice to pick which detective or which case made by which detective they use to prepare and present the case for court prosecution, and they pick you each and every time when they have a choice, you know you made it. But what does it get you, you might ask? Well, for one thing, it can get you performance punished, meaning you may never get promoted out of the unit because you are too valuable in it. You make cases, you solve jobs, you make prosecutors look good. I often said, solving murders is much like pissing your pants in a dark suit. You get a warm feeling, but no one notices. Not entirely true, but you get the point. I know this. Good homicide detectives come and go. The great ones stay put for a very long time. It was all right with me. I was doing what I wanted to do, and more importantly, I loved it. Detective Gavel was one of them. Harry, a.k.a. the Lone Ranger, was on it like a mustard plaster. The bosses knew that if the Ranger was on it and a pound of flesh could be hauled in, the Ranger would bring it in. Although May's case was listed as a missing persons case, Gavel was quietly handling it as a possible homicide case. Both him and Mass knew that that was the way to go, which was smart on their parts. Why? Because they knew that the possibility of their victim being snatched off the street, attacked, raped, robbed, murdered, and disposed of was a very real possibility in their city of brotherly love, unfortunately. They worked these mean streets for many years and saw firsthand the horrors that lie in wait in the underbelly of the city they called the City of Brotherly Love. Detective Gavel and Mass both knew very well that the atrocities of their city respected no boundaries. Chapter 7. Liar, liar, mouth on fire. A single clue. After several hours of intense formal interviews with some of the witnesses on the list, a think tank meeting was called, which took place in the conference room of the Roundhouse. This meeting would consist of Detective Gavel and Mass and members of the homicide squad who were available to attend, and of course the captain, the lieutenant, and sergeants of Homicide Command and the Crime Lab commander. The purpose of this meeting was to brief the command as to where they were with the investigation, what witnesses had to say in their statements, the progress in the case, if any, to exchange any ideas that could be helpful to the investigation of the case, and to request any additional resources if needed. The background checks were back. However, nothing of any consequence was discovered. There were virtually nothing known at this time to shed any light on this growing mystery disappearance. It had now been almost 2 full weeks and 4 days, 7 hours, since May was last known to be alive and well. The gravity of the case was intense. After all, a prominent young white female surgeon, a tourist from the UK, was missing in Philadelphia, And not just for a 24-hour period, but for 2 full weeks, 4 days and 7 hours. Each hour hit them in their heart like a sledgehammer, and they would ask themselves, where is she? What happened to her? The crime lab unit verified finding both May and Carmella's fingerprints in the public restroom at the park, noting nothing else of evidential value was known at this time. Extremely frustrating was the fact that Dr. Breacher was present and in view of live witnesses and only out of sight for a very short period of time. What the fuck did she do? Disappear like a fart in the wind? This fact, basically having nothing to go on after this much time, is an extremely brutal, hard pill to swallow for police and family of the victim alike. This much time, no word, no focus, no direction. The detectives know that the ball is in their court. All are looking to them to bring an answer. Your superiors know the strain on you, and they know how these things go. You know that much necessary ground has been covered, and no results produce results. It's the family that you feel the pressure from. You might be at wit's end, but you know there is no giving up. You push through. You have a case to crack. You're on a mission. The tougher the case, the harder you try. That's it. After the meeting, Detective Gavel and Mass decided to order a pickup lunch from Tony Luke's sandwich shop on Broad and Oregon Streets. The plan was to eat lunch in the conference room at the Roundhouse and carefully, over lunch, read over all of the few witness statements to date. They wanted to become intimately familiar with what each statement of each witness was, exactly what each said, for the main purpose of not wanting to miss a single piece of the last moments May was known to be alive. As they were doing this, they were interrupted by a few incoming hotline calls of fortune tellers, metal detector geeks offering their help locating their victim. They also spent a considerable amount of time coordinating a reward flyer sponsored by the family of Dr. Breacher in the amount of $50,000 cash for information which leads to the arrest and conviction of any person or persons found to be responsible for the disappearance of May Breacher. The reward would also be paid in full for the safe return of Dr. Breacher. In 1970, that kind of money could buy you 2 new homes and a new car. That got the attention of the public and the media in a large way. It caused a myriad of calls to the hotline that were completely useless, and a very few that required some follow-up. Nonetheless, it had to be done. You have to be very careful when you issue a reward for information to the public. The wording is essential, and your word must be gold. You must make sure that those funds are secured and will be paid out if the request becomes fruitful. By now, it was 5 p.m. Detective Gavel and Mass decided to head out to the well-known Melrose Diner in South Philadelphia to grab some dinner and a cup of coffee to plan their next move before calling it a night. There wasn't any meat on the bone to speak of. There was nothing of any consequence coming in on the tip line. To say they were feeling at a loss would be wrong. They were hopeful that the $50,000 reward, now officially out there, would be a huge motivator to shake out some information, but they knew they had to sort through that information carefully. They also knew that the reward money could generate information which would put them on a hamster wheel to nowhere. They knew very well that if two people knew something, it was no longer a secret. They also knew that sometimes these things take time, a lot of time, and they had the patience of saints in matters in the pursuit of the wicked. They worked for God. They spoke for the dead. A righteous duty. Sorting through bullshit verses, a real lead, is a very necessary evil. Sometimes you must prove a negative, just as you must prove a fact. Even though it was 5 p.m., they both ordered Spanish omelets with home fries and dessert. Harry's dessert, a toasted cinnamon bun with nuts and raisins. Ray ordered cherry jello with whipped cream. After the meal and during dessert, as Ray was talking and chomping on his jello about setting up a dragnet type scenario, meaning for them to team up and do an active surveillance on the area where May was last seen. Do it on the exact same night of the week of May the 26th, at the same hour, and talk to everyone who happens into the area to determine if anyone may have been in that area on the date and time in question and who may have seen something of evidential value. It was a long shot, but nonetheless a shot. Something that can prove to be effective. Detectives know you will never get a hit if you don't get up to bat. At that moment, Detective Gavel rears back in his seat, his eyes wide open, as if he had seen a ghost. He was fixated on Ray's bowl of jello. He blurts out, "Ray, stick your tongue out." He didn't at first, thinking that Harry was busting his chops or whatever. Only this time, Harry leans forward and says, "Ray, I'm serious. Stick out your tongue." Ray reluctantly sticks his tongue out. Harry grabs his police notebook from his jacket pocket and silently, hurriedly starts speed reading through his notes on his interview with Oliver Creel, the hunchbacked horse buggy driver. Harry then lightly smacks the table as he lowered his voice of excitement and speaks. "Remember the Creel interview? We locked him into stating that he was certain that he stayed with the horses and carriage while the two ladies, May and Carmella, took the restroom break. Carmella told us that when she returned to the carriage, Creel wasn't at the carriage. We asked him, I said, 'Are you sure that you did not leave to use the men's room or for any other reason?' His answer, 'Yeah, I'm sure. I stayed with the unit. I waited until the young lady came back, asking me if I knew where her friend was.' When we confronted him with the fact that Carmella said when she returned to the carriage that he wasn't there, he explained that he was actually on the other side of the carriage out of Carmella's view and came around the side, and then she realized that he was at the carriage after all, which Carmella confirmed. That means he's locked into the story that he did not leave the carriage during the break. It has to be a lie because he serviced the horses at the livery stable, and we know that. Why would he lie about that? Very interesting. I waited until the young lady came back, asking me if I knew where her friend May was. Harry repeats. Ray says, yeah, and so what? Harry asked, what color was his tongue when we were talking to him at the scene? Ray replies, I don't remember. Harry says, it was cherry red. It was friggin' red, Ray. Carmella's gelato was still on the bench, untouched, when she first knew May and her gelato were missing. God damn it. Let's get out of here and go over his statement again. I want to see if he ever mentions getting a gelato at all that night. I believe we locked him into his complete timeline of his steps that night. We need to close the door on the gelato. Let's head down to the park after we take another look at the vendor's statement as well. I want to make sure. The vendor said he knew Creel. He remembered serving May 2 cherry gelatos. Didn't mention serving one to Creel. Let's go see if we can nail it down. Let's grab the vendor first. I want to nonchalantly ask him if he served the hunchback a cherry on the evening in question. Motherfucker! Chapter 8. First, you must find the nails. While Detective Mass drove, Gavel grabbed the file and read Creel and the gelato vendor statements over again. No mention of Creel getting a gelato that night. While checking Creel's clean background check, he saw that there was a previous grand jury sealed inquiry, which was no build, but without prejudice. This meant that the case was not dismissed forever and could be revisited. Gavel would definitely look into that red flag. This was like someone had poured acid in his eyes. Now all of a sudden, they had a full plate of shit to do. They had to first thing in the morning convince the Philadelphia DA's office to petition the court to have Creel's record unsealed, which in 1970s was no easy task. And they had to re-interview the gelato vendor and possibly Creel about the red-tongued revelation. If they could show in a probable cause affidavit that Creel was lying to police about the gelato or anything else for that matter, it would make getting the sealed record easier to be unsealed, as if relevant, the information could serve as a reason to unseal. The detectives could only hope that the unsealing would shine some light, much needed light, on their investigation at hand. Things were happening. To get a record unsealed was virtually impossible unless the reason to do so had merit, serious merit. Like a murder case, the sealed record may have a bearing on. What we had here was no charge of murder on Creel, but what they did have is a record sealed without prejudice, meaning the case could be revisited by new evidence of extenuating reason which Detective Gavel would find if Creel suddenly became under suspicion, which sounded like they could very well be the case, just over the horizon. Keep in mind, the Philadelphia Police Department and the District Attorney's Office were two different and separate entities. They do not necessarily always work hand in hand. At the end of the day, the DA's office is the chief law enforcement officer. They have the final say. They are the boss. They arrived at the Liberty Park after departing the Melrose Diner and spotted the gelato vendor, Mr. Lou DiSalvo. With a big Italian smile on his face and scooping out his gelato to a short line of customers, The two detectives got in line, and when they were up, they promptly ordered 2 cherry gelatos. In short order, Harry Gavel introduced them and said, "Hey, Mr. DeSalvo, we would like to have a word with you if you could take a break for a few minutes. It's important. We just have a couple of questions about what we talked to you about the other day." Lou, without hesitation, placed his pre-made homemade sign in front of his window of the gelato stand, which read, "Closed," and said, "Sure, I'll be right out." Gavel said, "We'll meet you right here at the car. Thanks, Lou." At the squad car, Mr. DeSalvo took a seat in the back. Detective Gavel led the questioning. Gavel: "Okay, so you remember the night of May the 26th, Lou?" "Yep." Gavel: "And you are familiar with the carriage driver, Oliver Creel, correct?" Lou: "Yep." Gavel: "I mean, you know him from you being here and selling gelato, right?" Lou: "Yes. I see him out here all the time, and I know a bunch of the other drivers out here too." Gavel: "All right, I want to show you this picture, a Polaroid picture we took that night. Who is this in this picture, if you know?" Lou: "Yeah, that's Ollie, yeah." Detective Gavel: "Didn't think it necessary to have to describe Creel in his cloak and Grim Reaper appearance. He knew that Mr. DeSalvo knew him." Gavel: "Do you know his full name?" Lou: "Oh, sorry. Yeah, it's Oliver Creel." Gavel: "No doubt, right?" Lou: "Yes, no doubt." Gavel: "Do you remember we interviewed you on the night of the 26th out here? Then the next day or two, we interviewed you again at the police department, right?" Lou: "Yes, 2 times. Gavel: "Now, you said before you remember the 2 ladies that we talked to you about, and you said you remember serving the tall blonde lady, Miss May, 2 gelatos, correct?" Lou: "Yes, 2 cherry, one for her and one for her friend." Gavel: "And what flavor did you serve to Oliver Creel, that night? You remember?" Lou: "I didn't serve him gelato that night." Gavel: "Okay, now this is very important, Lou. How sure are you that you did not serve Mr. Creel a gelato on the evening in question or any other time that night?" Lou: "I'm sure, because he very rarely buys anything from my truck. He's usually busy with the people and the horses stuff." Gavel: "So you are 100% sure that on the night of May the 26th of this year, you did not sell gelato to Mr. Oliver Creel?" Lou: "Yes, that's correct. I am 100% sure." Gavel: "Let me ask you this. Is there any other people selling gelato in the area or park where you sell yours that you know of?" Lou: "No. That's why I sell here. I have the permit with the city, and nobody else is allowed around the same area to sell the same thing. That's why I have it here." Gavel: "Okay. Ray, let's check on that too. That's great." Gavel: "Okay, Mr. DeSalvo, my partner here, Ray, took notes of this interview, but I want you to come see us at the station so we can make a formal addendum to your statement from the other night. You'll be in and out really quick, I promise. Can we do it, say, tomorrow morning, 9 o'clock, Lou? At the Roundhouse, the same place." "Okay, I see you then," said Lou. Gavel shook his hand and said, "Great, see you tomorrow." The answer provided by Lou DeSalvo, stating that he was certain he did not serve Creel that night, only served for Detective Gavel to almost break into a smile, something he very rarely did. Usually only when he broke a murder case after a long, arduous investigation. After the field interview, Lou asked if he could ask them a question. Gavel said, "Of course. What is it?" Lou said, "Well, I'm just curious. I know who Ollie is from me selling here, but he's been around here for years like me. I didn't see him on the night the lady went missing or whatever, like I told you. I know that if I did see him that night, I would remember. I sort of keep my eye on him when I do see him and I know he's around. Do you guys think he's involved?" asked Mr. DeSalvo. "Well, we are just checking all of our information for your accuracy," Gavel said. "Why do you ask that? Do you have any reason to think that Creel could be involved at all?" Mr. DeSalvo then drops a bomb and says, "You guys did not hear this from me, but you should have a report somewhere on this. A couple or few years back, maybe longer, he was caught up in some kind of rap where he was accused of trying to drag some homeless prostitute into an abandoned house up in the Badlands in North Philly somewhere, and supposedly raped her or tried to rape her. The story back then was, according to him, the lady was a crack whore and couldn't remember where it happened. I know he tried to get me to lie for him and give him an alibi. I refused. The lady, again according to him later, said she lied about it to try and sue the carriage company he worked for in hopes of getting money. She was a homeless drug addict, hungry and desperate. The city dropped the case. I know he did it, or why ask me to cover for him. That's why I keep an eye on him. I don't really trust him. We think she was threatened and scared to testify, so the case was thrown out. I wouldn't put anything past him when he told me that she lied and they had no case on him." "Why do you think he told you about it?" asked Detective Massey. Lou said he never bragged about it or nothing. He told me because I knew a guy he used to flop with when he was staying at the Salvation Army that knew the story. He told me the story thinking that I would alibi for him. So I asked Creel, what was all that about? He wanted me to alibi him, and the police supposedly questioned the other guy. Creel was leery of what he told the police. This was music to the detectives' ears. They locked down the gelato thing and got a huge piece of information that they needed to explore. Detective Gavel's next questions were, what was this other guy's name and where can we find him? This revelation definitely provided probable cause to get a sealed file unsealed. The answer from DeSalvo was, long gone, lost touch. I have no idea, but I do remember his name. Henry Wickersham. Next stop was the Salvation Army, 1320 Arch Street, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. By now, it was pushing into evening hours, and there wasn't much they could do. Harry decided to call it a night and go home, hit the rack and try to grab some much-needed sleep. The pair of detectives would meet at the Detective Bureau at 8 a.m. and get a fresh start with two new objectives. One, do a petition to the DA to prepare an affidavit to the court requesting to unseal the Creel file. Two, prepare a Ducas Tecum subpoena to obtain the registry records of Oliver Creer and Henry Wickersham, documenting their residency at the Salvation Army homeless shelter. The detectives were now salivating at the mouth, anticipating digging into the old case history file on Creel, who they now dubbed the Hunchback, and locating the bedbug partner of the Hunchback. That's life in the big city. Chapter 9, There is Something in the Air. After using their time wisely to do the necessary paperwork, street legwork, they were forced to wait out the weekend and hit it fresh on Monday morning. It was 7:58 a.m. Monday morning. Detective Mass thought he would try to impress Harry by being not only on time for their big planned day, but he'd be early. Not a chance. Harry was already at his desk on his second cup of java. So much for that. The mission was clear. The DA was handed the petition in person, which outlined Oliver Creel as a possible suspect in the Dr. Breacher disappearance. Creel was raised in an orphanage, long gone now, but once was a sister facility of Byberry, a Philadelphia mental institution. There, orphans with debilitating disabilities were treated and housed. In Oliver's case, he had a severe curvature of the spine. The affidavit was completed with the outline of suspicions surrounding Mr. Creel and the disappearance of Dr. Breacher. The request called for the unredacted file in its entirety. The reason for the request was clear. The record would be examined by law enforcement and the district attorney's office for any historical clue or fact which would or might further the mounting possible involvement of Mr. Oliver Creel in the disappearance of Dr. May Libby Breacher on May the 26th, 1975. The DA's office arranged for them to meet with the first assistant district attorney, Jennifer O'Reilly. She was known as the executioner among her peers. She made no bones about pushing the buttons on you if you were found guilty. O'Reilly would gladly fry you. O'Reilly first greeted the two detectives and offered them coffee, then right down to business. Then came the first words pertaining to their affidavit in hand. Without even reading it, she says, "I understand you seek the opening of a court-sealed indictment of a citizen of this Commonwealth without any evidence to support it, and the citizen is free of any prior conviction. Is this correct?" Detective Gavel already told Mass that he would do the talking. That is not entirely true. The facts contained in the affidavit are backed up by sworn statements of a witness, personal observation by law enforcement, based on the fact that the indictment was sealed without prejudice, and given the known facts that our victim apparently was in the company of a person named in the affidavit, disappeared, is an official missing person. On record, the sworn statement within the affidavit speaks of direct knowledge that the sealed indictment speaks of a police investigation in which the subject of the indictment was in fact investigated for a possible abduction and may likely bear out facts similar to our current and ongoing investigation. I would submit that the case being classified as sealed without prejudice begs to be unsealed by the very substance of this, our current investigation. Detective Mass was impressed. Apparently, Harry Gavel had prepared his speech. O'Reilly agreed to read the affidavit while they waited. It sounded doable to her, but she wanted facts. After reading intently through the 3-page affidavit, O'Reilly blurts out, "The affidavit is replete with circumstantial information. The judge who gets this would only be interested in hard evidence indicating Creel was in fact a viable suspect in the disappearance of your victim. I do, however, find 2 intriguing facts stated here that I would like answers for, that, if answered to my satisfaction, could bolster the affidavit. In a very rare move, and I mean a very rare move, O'Reilly says, number 1, I would like you, Detective Gavel, to take a sworn oath here in my office this morning, attesting to the fact that you personally observed your suspect to have a red tongue when you interviewed him on the street the same night of the victim going missing. Further, you received a sworn statement from the gelato vendor, DeSalvo, that he did not sell Creel a gelato on the date in question, and the rest. Vis-a-vis, you checked. No one else was selling gelato in the area. Attests to the fact that a few days later, while having dinner at the Melrose Diner, the observation of Detective Mass eating cherry jello is when you quizzed him, and he candidly stated that he did not recall the color of Creel's tongue. That shows that the fact was not invented. It gives it credence. I also like the fact that you do have an independent witness who states that Creel's old bunkmate told him of Creel's possible involvement in a previous abduction case. Now, I do have faith in all that you put forth here. Remember, I know you need no reminding. Before you take the oath, if it is later determined that any of the sworn to information is inaccurate, you can be charged criminally for perjury, lying under oath. I don't have to tell you what you could face there. If you feel comfortable going under oath with this, I will serve the Commonwealth with our recommendation to grant relief, which will undoubtedly result in the unsealing of the indictment. So what do you want to do? Detective Gavel immediately replied, "Swear me in, and thank you." I feel it now in my gut. Detective Zero had an ear-to-ear grin on his face. He looked quite silly, actually, Detective Gavel thought. Detective Gavel wasn't smiling yet, but you could definitely see he was on a mission. One of the great ones, about to get his long lever under the globe of his work, catching murderers for a living, bringing closure to loved ones, making the wicked pay with their lives for their heinous, wicked deeds against society. The oath was done. The wheels of justice were now in motion. Tomorrow is another day in the life of men and women who hunt the wicked, and the plot thickens. Chapter 10. The ice pick points the way. Unfortunately, it would be several days before the D.A. O'Reilly could get the date with the magistrate Victor A. Stiletta. The court docket was completely bogged down with matters of the people versus the Commonwealth. However, since this was an active missing persons case of a well-respected surgeon who was a military veteran, a call from the first assistant DA, Miss O'Reilly, got the judge's attention, and he told her to meet him in his chambers the next morning at 11:30 a.m. He would read the affidavit before his lunch break on the next morning. At precisely 11:22 a.m., O'Reilly presented herself in courtroom 720 and was escorted into Judge A. Stiletto's chambers. There he was seated at his massive cherrywood desk, looking like a rosy-cheeked giant in his black robe, aka the gown, and silver hair. He leaned slightly forward with his forearms resting on his desk and smiled as he said, "Good to see you, Jennifer. Now that you're a bigwig, I don't get to see you that often. You still have your eye on the top seat?" "Oh, yes," she replied, "all in due time. Hopefully. Great to see you as well. What do you have here?" he said, as he reached for the folded-up, enveloped affidavit. O'Reilly gave him a very brief overview, as eloquently as her legal mind could summarize it. He read it with only the sound of him clicking the top of his pen, perched in his right hand. After a few minutes, without deliberating, without flinching, he whisked his pen across the signature block as he stated, "It is so ordered, Counselor. I'll have my clerk pull it from the archives and prepare true copies for you. Check with Linda tomorrow, probably after 10 a.m. Jennifer replied, "Thanks, Judge. Hopefully homicide can get some traction with this." The missing persons case of May Breacher now had face, meaning the police had a solid direction of important work ahead of them, which could lead them to solving the mystery. However, they knew how things happen in these matters. It could all go nowhere as well. They now worried that word of the court order to unseal the indictment might reach Creel before they snagged him up. They feared he might lawyer up if he got word that he was on their radar, that he was an intended target. Detective Gavel and Mass ordered a 24-hour, 7-day-a-week surveillance on Creel. Detective Mass would head it up while Gavel jumped on the following up, which the affidavit should present plenty of. First, Detective Gavel wanted to find two potential witnesses. The homeless woman, Mrs. Loretta Deans, a kidnap and rape victim of Creel's, and we'll call him Benny the Bum for now, the bump partner of Creel, Mr. Wickersham. When he was a resident of the Salvation Army, the man Creel apparently confided in about the homeless woman he allegedly attacked. It all was very tantalizing at the moment. Where was it all going to lead? Up in smoke, or prove to be invaluable to their case at hand? They would see. The unsealed indictment was now in the hands of Detective Harry Gavel. It was indeed a treasure trove of information. He now had the names of both the female victim of the allegations, her statement, her photo, as well as the name of the witnesses in the case that went ghost. Benny the Bum was actually identified, as stated by the vendor, Mr. Wickersham. His last known address, the Arch Street Salvation Army. He checked and could find no death certificate there. But there was hope that he was still alive somewhere. In hiding probably, but still alive. With subpoena in hand, he went to the Salvation Army, where he spoke to the custodian of the records and of numerous other titles, Mrs. Jane Rafferty. After informing her of what he was seeking, she disappeared for several moments. After asking Detective Gavel to take a seat, she hand-searched her files. When she returned, she was able to provide that Mr. Wickersham was found to have been attacked in his sleeping bag in the general sleeping quarters. He was initially unresponsive and was rushed to Thomas Jefferson Hospital at 111 South 11th Street. Upon close inspection of this report, Detective Gavel was able to confirm that Mr. Wickersham was stabbed up with an apparent ice pick just a few days before he was scheduled to appear at the grand jury to provide testimony as to his knowledge of the alleged rape that Creel was accused of. This was huge. There were no reported witnesses to the stabbing incident, or at least no one spoke up about it at the time. Creel was said to not have been present in the building on the night it happened. This would prove to be not true. Wickersham, luckily, was a World War II veteran who fought in the Marines and was on Normandy Beach on D-Day. Once he was stabilized, he was transferred to the Veterans Hospital, where he was treated without expense to him. This saved his life. After he survived his wounds and recovered well enough, he quickly migrated to sunny California. He is believed to be convalescing in a veterans nursing home there. He never files a police report about his ordeal of being attacked and never returned to the Philadelphia area. He wanted no part of reporting it, but since he had gone to the hospital for treatment, the report was made to the police department. Detective Gavel had a hunch, a theory of what might have taken place. In an hour, he was putting in a voucher for travel expenses to California to visit the World War II veteran, Henry Wickersham. He had an old Polaroid photo of him from the file and an address in California. After a few phone calls to the LAPD, Homicide Division, and the Veterans Assisted Living Facility, Detective Gavel was able to confirm that Wickersham was alive and semi-well and was listed as a resident there. The name of the facility was the Brickshire Home for Vets, aka the Brick House. Detective Gavel was booked to leave Philadelphia tomorrow morning. He took measures to not alert Mr. Wickersham of his visit and planned to drop into the center unannounced to interview him cold. This tactic usually gives the detective an edge on extracting information. It can also backfire. Detective Gavel found Mr. Wickersham to be in fairly good shape. He was mobile, clean in appearance, well cared for, and lucid. However, visibly shocked by the fact that a homicide detective now wanting to interview him. After introducing himself and giving Wickersham a brief synopsis of why he was there to interview him, Wickersham's first response was, "Man, I have nothing to say other than loose lips sink ships, man. I don't have nothing to tell you. You should have called me before coming all the way out here. I could have saved you the trip." Now, you know Detective Gavel was not leaving California without what he came there for. What Mr. Wickersham was not ready for, nor was he any match for, the investigative talents of Detective Harry Gavel. Gavel was like a bad fart. He did not go away quickly or easily. Stay tuned for part 3 of Pitchfork.